Hello and welcome to Forward to the Past. In this episode I'm going to be talking about yet another music player, but this one is personally very special to me. So what we have here is the Thomas Home Phonograph, made by a company called Caruso. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now before we get started, there's a difference between a phonograph and this particular model. You see, it's not technically a phonograph, in fact it's quite far from it. So a phonograph doesn't play flat disc-like records like a gramophone. No, what came first was cylinder records. So the windings go round like this instead of going in a circle like that, and then the needle will just move from one end to the other. So there's no side B, the whole thing is just one song per cylinder. It was later on that they used the flat discs on the 78 record players. Now, these would have been entirely clockwork in their day, fully mechanical, and there would have been a handle for winding it. Sadly, this one is broken. I'll get back to that in a bit. But there is this electrical cable and an antenna. You see, this is actually not a phonograph, it just looks like one, because inside this door here, the truth is revealed. We have a cassette player and also a radio. So just like in the previous episode with my steeple-tone Empire, this is something that looks old, but actually isn't. Although this model is probably maybe 20, 30 years old when they actually made this. But original phonographs, they go way back into the Victorian era. Now me and this exact model of this phonograph, cassette player, radio have a bit of history together. You see, when I was 16 years old, I was at college in the historic town of Lewes. Now in Lewes there is Lewes Flea Market, where over the years I've spent a lot of time and probably a considerable amount of money. Now while I was a student at Lewes, I remember seeing this in the flea market and it looked awesome and I instantly wanted to buy it. But one problem, there was a sign on it that said not for sale. And it's been not for sale for the next 16, 17 years. However, I went into the flea market recently with Jolie and my friend Jake, and I noticed that it had a price on it. I went up to the guy at the till who I've known for years, since I first started going in there when I was 16, and said, look, that phonograph thing, I asked you about that about 17 years ago and you said it's not for sale, and now it is? And he said to me, I didn't think that was for sale, the owner's obviously changed his mind about it. And I thought, hang on, if there's one person in the world who should buy that, it's me. I've been wanting to buy that thing for a very long time. So as you see it right now is pretty much as I saw it when I saw it for sale. Still dusty, still got the string from its price tag. I've taken the price tag off because, you know, I didn't even know if it worked, and the handle sadly has been broken for a very long time as well. Now I've only known it to be in the flea market for about 17 years, but for all I know it's been there for years and years and years before I ever even saw it. So it could have been like 20 years since this thing was even plugged in. So why don't we plug it in now and see what it does? So before I switch this on for the first time, I just want to reiterate one thing. All of this at the top with the cylinder record, the horn and the needle is purely aesthetic, it doesn't function. Right, it's a big moment, let's see if this actually works. Okay. So a little light backlight has come on there, which is nice. Let's turn the volume up. It's actually got a really nice sound to it. Right, I'll just turn it off because it's time to try the cassette part. So I got a tape here. This is Touchstone, so a nice reference to the video a couple of weeks ago from my dad's band. So this is one of their old cassettes. Now when you put the tape in, if it's turned off, obviously nothing will happen, but when I turn it on, there's no setting for cassette, it would go straight to radio. The only way the cassette activates is by actually putting the tape in. So, if I turn this on, you'll hear the radio, and then I put this in, and the tape will start to play. So the cassette player part doesn't really have many controls. This is very typical of these kind of fairly stylized radios and cassette players. So apart from eject by pushing this button in here, and then the radio would come on, the only control I have is fast forward, which is where you push it in halfway, and then it will start to fast forward the tape and inadvertently start to rewind the other side. There we go. So all in all, simplistic, yes, but functional. So that's basically how it works, very straightforward. So let's have a little look on what's going on the inside. Right, so inside here is the pretty simple mechanism that we have. So one of the differences between this and, say, the Steepletone Empire is the fact this only has one speaker. So I must admit it's got a surprisingly good sound despite the fact it's absent on the other side. Up here is just the back of the actual the crank handle, which is obviously purely there aesthetically. And then we've just got the very simple cassette player there. I can just show you guys the back of the cassette player a bit closer up in action. So I'm just going to switch on the radio and then put the tape in. There we go. And just instantly starts to function. So there you have it, guys. It's pretty straightforward. There's not really a whole lot else I can show you on this, but there is one thing. Remember I said this is just as I found it when I picked it up from the flea market, and it's been sitting there for 20 odd years. It could do with a bit of a clean. Well, I think the first thing I'm going to do is give it a good dusting. Look at that. Ugh. And also, the end of the horn here is lovely actual brass. Let's give that a bit of a clean up with some Barasso. Well, after a lot of cleaning and scrubbing, it's finally ready. Go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. 17 years or more in the waiting that I've been wanting to buy this thing, never thinking they'd actually put it up for sale. This exact one. I'm thrilled to have it. It's polished up beautifully. I'm going to look after it. And the other thing is I'm going to use it on a regular basis. No more sitting on the top of a shelf gathering dust.